I woke up this morning with my man who set on freedom.
Today we live in a free country. There is no slavery, no major segregation, and there is a level of equality among all people. However, the phrase land of the free and home of the brave was not always accounted for. Not all people were free. The United States has been enslaving African Americans until the late 1800s, and even after the 13th Amendment, which freed slaves in 1865, they were discriminated and treated inhumanely. This inhumane treatment of the slaves went without much consideration until the brave African Americans decided to fight back in the 50s with nonviolent protests inspired by leaders such as Rosa Parks, Martin Luther King Jr., and the Little Rock Nine. Sit-ins were one of the most commonly used protest tactics during the Civil Rights Movement. They were very simple protests where people would sit in at a restaurant or other public place and wouldn't leave until they were evicted, usually by force or arrested. This form of peaceful protesting was effective because it was usually done in a very popular restaurant or social venue and oftentimes was televised. This exposed the abuse that the blacks went through and the strength that they showed not to fight back. The Montgomery bus boycott was a 13-month mass protest that ended with the U.S. Supreme Court ruling that segregation on public buses is unconstitutional. The boycott was so strong that some started to pass legislation to force them to ride the buses. The boycott was nationally televised, and because of that, not only did it increase the amount of African Americans that joined in, but it also resulted in white men and women joining the cause. The rejection of bus travel had civil rights leaders such as Martin Luther King Jr. in hot water, with the people trying to keep Jim Crow laws around. When the boycotts began to grow, a group of angry men and women bombed King's house. Rather than scaring King and his followers, it only made them realize how much more they needed to work for equal rights. Several large marches were performed during the Civil Rights Movement. Two of the most known are the March on Washington and the Selma to Montgomery March. The March on Washington was the better known of the two, and at the end of the march is where the most famous speech of the Civil Rights Movement was delivered. Martin Luther King delivered his I Have a Dream speech, that was known as the speech that finally persuaded the nation of equal rights. The other march, known as the March from Selma to Montgomery, was done in 1965 and was to bring justice to the death of Jimmy Lee Jackson, who was attacked by state and local police with billy clubs and tear gas during a protest. Rosa Parks was a hero in the Civil Rights Movement, but did not necessarily mean speak. After a long day at work, Parks took a seat at the front of a bus, reserved only for whites to relax their weary feet. When a white man came and told her to move to the back of the bus, she refused. This event lit the flame to the beginning of the Civil Rights Movement. After the bus incident occurred, it rallied some people of her local chapter of the NAACP and the renowned Martin Luther King Jr. to come together to make a difference. Her no was what kicked off the Civil Rights Movement across the southern states and is what ultimately began the push for equal rights. Although she was not the first to refuse giving up her seat, Parks's determination and rigorous efforts created a revolution that would change America forever. Martin Luther King Jr. was considered to be one of the most famous and influential men in the Civil Rights Movement. His impact began when he led the Montgomery bus boycotts in 1965, and its words and ideas have since shaped our country and our equality. To cap off the March on Washington, he delivered his impressionable I Have a Dream speech that would later become one of the most memorable speeches ever given in America.
That one day, this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created with each other. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will they be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream.
King, raised by a Lutheran minister, was inspired by Mohandas Gandhi to include nonviolent protests in his fight for equality. These lessons and idols aided him in gathering an alliance of willing people to help make a difference with civil rights issues. Much like our founding fathers, King believed that all men were created equal, no matter the color of their skin. This nonviolent attitude is what made a difference in the fight for equal rights, for it proved to people that were against the blacks that no matter how much torture and abuse that they were put through, they were strong enough to not fight back. When King was shot and killed on April 4th, 1968, hundreds of riots broke out throughout the country in anger. King's legacy has left an impact on America ever since. The Little Rock Nine was a group of African American students enrolled in the Little Rock Central High School in 1957. These students were allowed to attend the newly desegregated school after the historic Brown v. Board of Education of Topeka, Kansas declared all laws establishing segregated schools to be unconstitutional. This was the first high school in the Deep South to become integrated. However, it did not happen smoothly. After a series of unfortunate events occurred to the black students, the president sent in armed forces to guard and protect them until the school was fully integrated.